June 15, 1944, London sat tense beneath low clouds as war news echoed through ministries and streets alike. 9 days after D-Day, Allied fortunes remained uncertain despite landings secured along Normandy's beaches under relentless German pressure there. Inside 10 Downing Street, Winston Churchill prepared for difficult conversation, surrounded by cigar smoke heavy with responsibility and doubt tonight. The Prime Minister sensed the war's hinge moments arriving, where decisions shaped perception as much as battlefield outcomes across Europe. Dwight Eisenhower entered carrying fatigue earned through command, the weight of coalition war pressing visibly upon his posture this evening. Brandied glasses rested nearby, symbols of rare pause amid ceaseless demands following the Normandy landings and strategic uncertainty mounting rapidly. Churchill spoke deliberately, framing urgency without alarm, while signaling complexity that required Eisenhower's full attention during this late evening meeting. Eisenhower recognized the tone instantly, experience warning him that straightforward solutions would not follow within Allied strategic deliberations. That night, Normandy fighting continued brutally, casualties mounted and progress lagged expectations set during invasion planning by Allied staffs earlier. That spring, commanders sought advantage through deception, delay and misdirection while soldiers struggled ashore under fire along contested French coastlines daily then. Operation Fortitude loomed over discussions, its success binding Allied strategy to sustained illusion beyond initial landings across German perceptions. Still, Churchill understood deception demanded continuity, not merely surprise, if German reserves were to remain misallocated during coming critical summer weeks. At the heart stood George Patton, absent from Normandy, yet central within enemy calculations according to intelligence assessments gathered recently. Eisenhower knew Patton's symbolic power exceeded divisions or tanks, shaping German expectations profoundly across occupied Europe since earlier campaigns there. Churchill proposed extending illusion, even as real operations expanded, a dangerous but enticing balance for Allied leadership. That evening alone. Such strategy required precision timing, narrative control and disciplined restraint from volatile personalities within high command circles involved directly now. Eisenhower listened carefully, aware that missteps could fracture trust between allies or embolden German counteraction during this fragile phase of war. Yet opportunity beckoned, because maintaining German fixation elsewhere might save countless lives in Normandy during ongoing attritional fighting. There still. Smoke curled upward as Churchill leaned forward, revealing proposal layered with audacity and peril for Allied command. That night, alone, the conversation shifted from context toward action, focusing sharply upon Patton's peculiar usefulness within deceptive strategy, unfolding then, slowly emerging. Eisenhower anticipated resistance, not from enemies but from managing Patton himself under unprecedented strategic constraints, imposed suddenly by deception, planning. He understood Patton's hunger for recognition, fame and visible command within American military culture, during global war then raging fiercely. London's night pressed inward, underscoring gravity as decisions here would ripple across continents and shape battles. Far away soon. Enough. What began as conversation would evolve into one of history's most intricate wartime deceptions involving Patton, Churchill, Eisenhower, directly together. Before Normandy, Allied planners invested immense effort crafting Operation Fortitude, a deception designed to mislead German intelligence about invasion location and timing. This false narrative required meticulous construction, because believable fiction demanded details matching reality across reconnaissance photographs, intercepted signals and human reporting networks simultaneously. In southeastern England, empty fields transformed into theatrical stages of war preparation, filled with inflatable tanks, wooden aircraft, and canvas trucks. From the air, these formations appeared authentic, convincing German analysts that a massive American force waited patiently opposite the Pas de Calais, ready for decisive assault. Radio operators played crucial roles, transmitting scripted chatter that mimicked genuine army communications rhythms. Call signs, unit movements, logistical complaints, and routine discipline reports were all fabricated carefully, creating an illusion of operational life convincing enough to satisfy seasoned enemy intercept units. False headquarters bustled with deliberate visibility, lights glowing at night, vehicles arriving and departing on schedule. Everything suggested readiness, because deception succeeded only when mundane details reinforced the larger lie without theatrical exaggeration that might invite suspicion from careful observers. German intelligence, already predisposed toward Calais as logical invasion point, accepted the evidence eagerly. Fortitude exploited confirmation bias expertly, feeding expectations rather than challenging them, ensuring German high command reinforced beliefs already rooted within their strategic assumptions. At the center of this imaginary army stood George Patton, chosen precisely for his fearsome reputation. German officers respected his aggressiveness, recalling North Africa and Sicily, therefore assuming any force commanded by Patton represented the Allies' true main effort. Patton's assignment was paradoxical, commanding formations that did not exist while embodying threat more potent than actual divisions. His presence alone validated the illusion, demonstrating how individual reputation could substitute for material strength within psychological warfare on grand strategic scales. Allied intelligence services coordinated double agents feeding Berlin carefully curated reports. These agents confirmed sightings, troop concentrations, and Patton's supposed impatience, reinforcing the idea that he awaited orders to unleash decisive invasion against Calais. When D-Day erupted in Normandy, Fortitude's illusion did not collapse. Instead, German commanders interpreted landings as diversionary, holding armored reserves back, convinced Patton's army would soon strike elsewhere with devastating force. This delay proved critical, granting Allied troops precious time to consolidate fragile beachheads. German divisions that might have counterattacked. Normandy remained immobilized, trapped by belief in an army that existed only through disciplined imagination and deliberate Allied coordination. Yet Fortitude carried inherent risk, because sustaining deception required continued plausibility even as real operations expanded. Challenge became maintaining fiction without hindering actual combat effectiveness, a delicate balance demanding constant adjustment as circumstances evolved rapidly. By early summer 1944, Fortitude stood as one of history's most elaborate illusions. Its success demonstrated that modern warfare extended beyond guns and tanks, encompassing perception itself as battlefield where carefully shaped belief could decide outcomes decisively. Long before Normandy, George Patton's reputation traveled faster than any Allied column, shaping German expectations through memory, rumor, and hard experience. His aggressive campaigns in North Africa and Sicily convinced enemy commanders that where Patton appeared, decisive action and rapid collapse inevitably followed. German intelligence profiles emphasized personality alongside capability, and Patton's image dominated their assessments. They viewed him as uniquely dangerous, a commander who disregarded caution, exploited weakness instantly, and pursued retreating forces without pause or mercy. This perception mattered profoundly, because intelligence analysis often relies on narrative coherence rather than pure data. Patton fit German assumptions about American warfare, confirming fears that the Allies would unleash their most ruthless general at the decisive point. Captured documents later revealed how frequently Patton's name appeared in German briefings. He became shorthand for offensive intent, symbolizing not merely an army commander but the embodiment of Allied striking power concentrated for breakthrough. German officers remembered Kasserine and Sicily vividly, where Patton's arrival signaled reversal of fortunes. Those experiences shaped belief that his presence guaranteed escalation, making his location a strategic indicator surpassing divisional strength or logistical readiness. Thus, Fortitude exploited psychology efficiently, placing Patton atop a non-existent army. German analysts reasoned that Allies would never waste Patton on deception, concluding his command marked the true invasion axis with near certainty. Ironically, Patton himself understood the power of image, cultivating theatrical behavior deliberately. Polished helmets, ivory-handled pistols, and fiery speeches reinforced myth, transforming personal ego into weaponized perception exploited later by Allied planners. This symbolic weight meant Patton's inactivity raised suspicion within German ranks. They assumed a lull signified preparation, interpreting silence not as absence, but as coiled threat awaiting release against their most vulnerable defenses. Consequently, German high command prioritized countering Patton above other considerations. Reserves remained tethered to Calais, immobilized by fear of confronting him, even as Normandy deteriorated into grinding attrition demanding urgent reinforcement. Symbolism thus achieved operational effect. Substituting for physical force, Patton's name pinned divisions in place, delayed redeployment, and distorted enemy decision-making without firing a single shot during Fortitude's critical opening phase. Yet this symbolic role frustrated Patton deeply, because it denied tangible command. Being reduced to image contradicted his self-conception as battlefield leader, creating tension between strategic necessity and personal ambition that Eisenhower would soon confront directly. Ultimately, Germany feared Patton less for what he did than for what they believed he would do. That belief, carefully cultivated and exploited, demonstrated how modern war transforms individuals into strategic symbols capable of shaping entire campaigns. Churchill framed the proposal slowly, emphasizing deception layered upon deception, strategy wrapped around personality. He argued that Patton could fight real battles while Germans believed those victories were feints, preserving Fortitude's illusion even as Allied forces surged from Normandy eastward. To Churchill, complexity was protection, because confusion multiplied enemy hesitation. He envisioned Patton advancing aggressively in France, yet German intelligence interpreting every movement as misdirection, delaying redeployment and ensuring reserves remained frozen near Calais, waiting for an invasion that never arrived. Eisenhower immediately grasped the operational risk buried inside brilliance. If Patton succeeded too visibly, the deception collapsed, yet if restrained excessively, momentum could stall, costing lives, time, and political confidence during a campaign already burdened by expectations and public scrutiny. Churchill pressed forward regardless. Animated by intellectual confidence and wartime intuition, he believed German analysts were predictable, chained to assumptions about Patton's primacy, and would rationalize any evidence necessary to preserve their belief that Patton heralded the decisive blow alone. The deception demanded Patton suppress instinct, something Churchill underestimated. Patton thrived on recognition, headlines, and visible dominance, yet now he would be asked to conquer ground quietly, allowing others to claim credit while his own achievements dissolved deliberately into strategic ambiguity. Eisenhower foresaw command friction spreading outward from this decision. Subordinate generals would struggle to interpret Patton's priorities, intelligence officers would parse contradictory signals, and political leaders would demand explanations, all while Patton maneuvered aggressively under constraints deliberately invisible to most observers. Churchill accepted that chaos was inherent, even desirable. War, he believed, rewarded audacity over neat administration, and Patton represented audacity incarnate, a living instrument capable of bending enemy logic, precisely because his behavior defied orderly expectation repeatedly under pressure conditions. The proposal transformed Patton into a paradoxical weapon. He would be simultaneously unleashed and constrained, encouraged to advance yet discouraged from boasting, victorious in reality while portrayed as secondary in narrative, forcing his ego into service of deception rather than glory. Eisenhower questioned whether Patton would comply once engaged. Success would tempt him to publicize victories, pressure superiors, and dominate headlines, potentially unraveling months of preparation. Yet failure to exploit momentum risked prolonging combat and increasing Allied casualties dramatically across Europe. Churchill remained confident Patton could be managed through careful framing. If presented as supreme strategic duty, not personal slight, Patton might accept restraint temporarily, believing history would ultimately recognize his contribution, even if newspapers remained silent during wartime conflict conditions. The double reverse deception thus rested on fragile psychology. German fear, Allied discipline, Patton's ego, and Eisenhower's patience all intersected, creating a strategy dependent less on material than on sustained behavioral performance under extraordinary operational and emotional strain throughout campaign. Churchill concluded the proposal believing risk unavoidable in victory. Using Patton as bait while unleashing him as weapon promised immense reward, yet failure would expose Allied command disunity, mislead friendly forces, and hand Germans clarity they desperately sought during 1944. Eisenhower confronted a dilemma unique to modern warfare, balancing operational necessity against volatile personality while history accelerated. He respected Patton's brilliance deeply, yet feared that unchecked ego could fracture coalition unity, undermine deception, and convert strategic subtlety into public spectacle at precisely the wrong moment. Managing Patton required constant psychological calibration, not formal orders alone, because conventional discipline failed against extraordinary temperament. Eisenhower understood that Patton performed best when trusted, yet required boundaries invisible enough to avoid rebellion, while firm enough to preserve strategic coherence across Allied command structures. Every directive to Patton carried double meaning. Operational intent paired with emotional signaling. Too much restraint suggested distrust, while excessive freedom risked uncontrolled exposure, forcing Eisenhower to phrase instructions carefully, blending praise, warning, and implied consequence into messages crafted as much for Patton's pride as battlefield outcomes. The deception demanded silence from the loudest man in uniform, an inherently unstable contradiction. Eisenhower feared that battlefield success would provoke Patton's natural desire for recognition, compelling reporters, soldiers, and rivals to amplify achievements that needed deliberate understatement for Fortitude's continued plausibility. Eisenhower also weighed political realities pressing from Washington and London. Civilian leaders expected results, momentum, and clarity, not explanations about intentional ambiguity, forcing Eisenhower to absorb blame quietly while shielding both Patton and the deception from premature scrutiny or public misunderstanding. Personal history complicated their relationship further, layered with mutual respect and previous conflict. Eisenhower remembered earlier incidents where Patton's conduct embarrassed command, reinforcing anxiety that even well-intentioned actions could spiral beyond control once Patton re-entered active combat leadership. Trust therefore became Eisenhower's primary instrument of control. Paradoxically risky yet necessary. By signaling confidence, Eisenhower hoped Patton would internalize restraint as personal responsibility rather than imposed limitation, aligning ego with mission instead of allowing resentment to undermine compliance during critical operational windows. Communication channels grew deliberately indirect, preserving deniability for both men. Eisenhower issued broad objectives rather than specific publicity constraints, allowing Patton to interpret silence as expectation, while preserving flexibility should outcomes require retrospective justification or corrective intervention later. Privately, Eisenhower prepared contingency responses for failure scenarios. If Patton exposed the deception unintentionally, Eisenhower would shoulder blame, reframing success as coincidence, while accelerating alternate plans to compensate for German reorientation once Fortitude inevitably eroded under battlefield realities. The strain of anticipation weighed heavily on Eisenhower's leadership psyche. Victory now depended less on enemy reaction than on Allied self-discipline, a far more unpredictable variable, particularly when entrusted to a commander whose instinct was relentless forward motion and personal dominance. Eisenhower's dilemma revealed modern command's hidden burden. Leadership meant not merely directing armies, but managing personalities capable of altering strategic balance, requiring emotional endurance equal to operational skill during moments when individual behavior could decide continental outcomes. In choosing to trust Patton, Eisenhower accepted calculated vulnerability. The decision embodied Allied confidence in adaptive leadership, betting that disciplined genius could be guided, not suppressed, and that Patton's fire could be harnessed without igniting the deception holding German defenses frozen in place. Eisenhower chose careful language, framing duty as honor while explaining deception required restraint from Patton during forthcoming continental operations ahead. Patton listened silently, jaw tight, recognizing the request challenged instinct and reputation simultaneously within wartime command structures and public myth. The explanation emphasized strategic necessity. Germans must misread victories as distractions rather than decisive blows across occupied France. Deliberately sustained, Patton bristled internally, yet understood the logic, because fear attached to his name remained potent among enemy analysts, planners, commanders. Eisenhower warned success must appear modest, reports delayed, publicity softened, achievements deliberately blurred across Allied channels, briefings, communiques, narratives. Carefully, such constraints struck Patton as unnatural. Victory demanded celebration. Momentum thrived on visible dominance within armored warfare, doctrine, culture, tradition. Eisenhower appealed to history, promising recognition later, urging patience for greater strategic payoff beyond immediate headlines. Communiques, press, acclaim, cycles. Patton weighed legacy carefully. Ambition burned fiercely. Yet he valued victory above applause for America, allies, armies, soldiers, memory, posterity. The request reframed glory as silence, asking Patton to conquer while appearing secondary within official narratives, bulletins, maps, summaries, releases. He recognized the irony. Fame would empower deception only if temporarily restrained by discipline. Trust, timing, command, secrecy, patience, resolve. Eisenhower stressed cooperation. Coalition politics demanded harmony. Individual theatrics risked alliance trust across British, American, Canadian, Free French commands, leaderships. Patton understood alliances mattered, yet felt personally singled out for sacrifice despite proven combat record. Victories, preparation, readiness, experience, reputation. Acceptance required reframing ego. Patton chose to view restraint as higher command tests demanding maturity, discipline, control, patience, loyalty, judgment. He agreed reluctantly, promising compliance while bracing against instinctive self-promotion amid advancing operations. Victories, breakthroughs, opportunities, temptations, pressures, scrutiny. Eisenhower sensed commitment. Yet anticipated friction once battles erupted unpredictably across Normandy, Brittany, France, roads, towns, rivers, crossings, fronts, axes. He prepared reminders, intermediaries, and gentle corrections, preserving dignity while enforcing silence through channels, memos, conversations, signals, pauses, omissions, phrasing. Patton departed the meeting energized, burdened, determined to master an unfamiliar discipline within strategic, informational, psychological, warfare, constraints, expectations, frameworks. He likened it privately to muzzling instinct, running fastest while appearing restrained before observers, enemies, allies, reporters, historians, critics, rivals. The challenge tested Patton differently than combat, demanding silence under success during advances, captures, breakthroughs, encirclements, pursuits, victories, momentum, exploitation. He resolved to fight ferociously, letting others claim headlines temporarily across newspapers, radios, briefings, speeches, communiques, ceremonies, citations, announcements, histories. Such restraint conflicted with persona. Yet Patton embraced the gamble, trusting Eisenhower: strategy, timing, deception, patience, purpose, duty, victory, outcome. He believed results would speak later, louder than wartime silence. Once archives, memoirs, histories, scholars, veterans, records, assessments, judgments, perspectives. Thus Patton accepted the paradox. Peacock feathers folded for victory across Europe. Campaigns, operations, deception, strategy, alliances, command, history, memory. The agreement bound success to discretion, shaping campaigns before they began through expectations, controls, narratives, discipline, secrecy, patience, leadership, resolve. Third Army officially activated in early August 1944. Patton surged from Normandy under orders real and deceptive, conducting genuine operations while framed as distraction, advancing with armored speed, infantry coordination, and artillery support, yet publicly minimized within Allied briefings and strategic narratives. Combat erupted immediately across hedgerows and roads. German units engaged seriously, unaware their opponents symbolized misdirection. Patton pressed relentlessly, exploiting gaps, seizing crossings, bypassing resistance, winning real battles while intelligence channels portrayed movement as secondary effort within Allied planning assumptions. Orders flowing from higher headquarters remained deliberately vague, objectives broad enough to encourage momentum, restrictions subtle enough to maintain deception, allowing Patton latitude while preserving narrative control. An uneasy balance between operational freedom and informational constraint during critical summer campaigning. German defenders experienced no illusion on the ground. Shells landed, tanks advanced, prisoners taken, casualties mounted, villages fell, yet strategic analysts filtered reports through fortitude expectations, interpreting Patton's thrusts as diversionary noise masking the real invasion threat toward Pas-de-Calais. Third Army logistics strained under rapid advance. Fuel trucks raced forward. Engineers repaired bridges. Depots improvised, all conducted quietly. Successes intentionally underreported, ensuring German command underestimated scale while Allied soldiers felt unmistakable operational urgency across Western France corridors daily, nightly. Patton enforced speed personally, appearing at junctions, command posts, front lines, urging movement, rewarding initiative, chastising delay, yet restraining public rhetoric, instructing staff to soften language, blur achievements, and avoid celebratory exaggeration within official communiques and briefings issued carefully upward. Intelligence summaries reaching Berlin remained conflicted. Tactical alarms contrasted with strategic confidence. Analysts debated Patton's intent, many concluding aggression supported diversion thesis, thereby delaying redeployment of armored reserves urgently needed against Normandy's expanding Allied lodgment during decisive summer weeks thereafter. Within Third Army, soldiers sensed contradiction. Fighting hard while hearing little acclaim, victories passing quietly, yet trust in Patton deepened. Understanding silence served larger purpose, contributing indirectly to breakthrough by immobilizing German strength elsewhere across Western Front sectors simultaneously broadly. Operational tempo accelerated beyond expectations. Towns captured faster than maps updated. Columns advanced daily. Enemy cohesion faltered. All under veil of misinterpretation, Patton's real success feeding strategic illusion crafted months earlier by Allied deception planners in London and Washington circles. Coordination challenges multiplied. Adjacent armies struggled aligning with Patton's pace. Yet restraint preserved deception. Eisenhower monitored carefully, accepting friction as price for immobilizing German response during fragile breakout phase across northern France corridors and sustaining Allied strategic surprise through August. German field commanders reported emergencies, requesting reinforcements denied by higher command, convinced main blow awaited Calais. Thus, Third Army advanced against fragmented resistance, benefiting from paralysis induced by sustained misreading of Patton's role within Allied deception framework established earlier months. Thus, real warfare unfolded inside fabricated story, bullets and blood coexisting with lies and silence. Third Army winning materially while losing recognition temporarily, proving deception could shape outcomes as decisively as armor and firepower during pivotal summer campaign across France. German intelligence assessments during summer 1944 remained anchored to Calais, because Fortitude reinforced expectations through controlled signals, intercepted traffic, and Patton's perceived primacy, convincing analysts that Normandy battles were costly diversions rather than decisive operations unfolding elsewhere across France. Reports arriving from field units described Patton's rapid advances, yet analysts contextualized them as deliberate feints, reasoning that such aggression fit deception patterns, reinforcing belief that the true invasion still loomed across the narrow waters facing southeastern England and the Pas-de-Calais region. The German High Command clung to assumptions built before D-Day, because abandoning them implied catastrophic intelligence failure, and institutional inertia favored continuity, encouraging reinterpretation of contradictory evidence rather than admission that strategic foundations had collapsed beneath Allied pressure. Radio intercepts and controlled leaks continued supporting the illusion, suggesting ongoing preparations near Dover, while Patton's reputation magnified credibility, leading German planners to conclude that his presence anywhere signaled misdirection until unmistakable confirmation of a main assault appeared elsewhere. Consequently, armored divisions remained immobilized near Calais, awaiting orders that never came, while frontline commanders elsewhere faced shortages, confusion, and delayed reinforcements, weakening German defensive coherence precisely as Allied momentum accelerated beyond initial Normandy confines. German intelligence officers debated internally, yet consensus favored caution, believing premature redeployment risked exposing the Reich to Patton's feared strike, a psychological weight that paralyzed decision-making during weeks when flexibility might have slowed Allied advance. Patton's real victories paradoxically strengthened deception, because success aligned with expectations of aggressive diversion, enabling analysts to rationalize losses as necessary sacrifices, masking a greater impending blow still anticipated against Calais defenses. Hitler's directives reinforced rigidity, forbidding unauthorized movements, demanding absolute certainty before shifting reserves, thereby amplifying deception's effect, as subordinate commanders hesitated, trapped between battlefield realities and strategic illusions sanctioned from above. Time became the Allies' greatest weapon as each delayed decision compounded German weakness, allowing Third Army and neighboring formations to penetrate deeper while enemy strength remained misallocated, waiting for an invasion phantom sustained by fear and misinformation. German soldiers sensed disaster approaching, yet intelligence narratives lagged, disconnected from lived experience, revealing how perception, not reality, governed high command responses during late summer operations across collapsing Western Front positions. By the time clarity emerged, Allied forces had broken beyond Normandy decisively, rendering Calais irrelevant strategically, exposing how deception preserved German paralysis long enough to guarantee Allied breakout success and irreversible momentum. Thus German intelligence, deceived by design and psychology, held forces uselessly at Calais, proving that belief can immobilize armies, and that Patton's symbolic power, exploited deliberately, reshaped battlefield outcomes without firing a single deceptive shot. Despite meticulous planning, the Fortitude deception operated on a razor's edge, because timing, communication, and human behavior constantly threatened exposure, forcing Eisenhower and his staff to monitor progress obsessively, aware that a single misstep could unravel months of preparation and compromise operational advantage rapidly. Patton's aggressive instincts sometimes skirted the deception's limits, as victories unfolded faster than intended and reports from forward units risked highlighting significance, creating tension between battlefield momentum and the careful narrative required to maintain German misperceptions across critical sectors. Allied intelligence officers worked frantically to manage signals and reports, filtering information so that success remained visible only to necessary parties, ensuring Berlin received exactly enough data to maintain belief in the Calais threat, yet not enough to detect reality clearly. Small errors in timing could trigger German re-evaluation because overlapping radio chatter, movement visibility, and local encounters sometimes exceeded scripted expectations, creating moments when the illusion almost revealed the true location of the Allied offensive and Patton's active command. Eisenhower repeatedly calculated risk, knowing that the cost of exposure included potential counterattacks, disruption of Normandy consolidation, and loss of confidence among coalition partners, making each decision both operational and psychological under the stress of accelerated campaign tempo. Patton himself occasionally expressed frustration, interpreting constraints as impediments to glory, and his natural boldness threatened to reveal the full impact of Third Army. Yet Eisenhower relied on personal trust, appeal to duty, and shared history to maintain discipline without direct suppression. Staff officers circulated instructions carefully, revising orders, delaying communiques, and managing public relations with surgical precision to maintain ambiguity, while historians would later recognize these weeks as delicate choreography, balancing real combat with a fictitious strategic overlay across multiple theaters. German reconnaissance occasionally glimpsed real movement, prompting debates in high command, yet analysts consistently defaulted to expectation bias, interpreting unusual activity as proof of the continued Calais threat, illustrating how intelligence can be manipulated by credible but incomplete evidence strategically applied. The thin margin demanded constant attention, because even small deviations risked unraveling entire sequences, requiring constant updates, recalibration, and rapid problem-solving, emphasizing that deception is as fragile as it is powerful, relying on disciplined coordination under high stress and uncertainty. Psychological pressure weighed heavily on Eisenhower, staff, and Patton alike, as success demanded simultaneous excellence in execution and subtlety, forcing leadership to operate under conditions where human error, ego, or miscommunication could compromise strategic outcomes dramatically. Despite near misses, the combination of Patton's controlled aggression, careful information management, and disciplined Allied execution preserved the ruse, demonstrating that precision, patience, and trust were as vital as tanks, artillery, and infantry in achieving campaign objectives decisively. Ultimately, the Fortitude deception navigated a razor-thin margin, converting risk into advantage, where the illusion survived because human behavior was anticipated, leveraged, and guided with exceptional foresight, proving that in war, perception can be as decisive as reality when managed with expertise and daring. The use of Patton as both weapon and decoy left a legacy demonstrating the extraordinary power of strategic misdirection, because it proved that an individual's reputation could be weaponized to shape enemy behavior, immobilize forces, and create opportunities far beyond conventional tactical influence in wartime Europe. Allied success during Fortitude reshaped military thinking, showing that deception could achieve outcomes equivalent to physical force, and that manipulating perception, expectation, and fear could produce operational advantages without expending men or materiel, directly against enemy formations during decisive campaigns. Patton's dual role highlighted the interplay between personality and strategy, because his very presence commanded attention, induced caution, and delayed German action, revealing that psychological impact can equal the effect of entire divisions when skillfully exploited in coordinated operations. Historians later emphasized that Fortitude and Patton's function exemplified modern warfare's complexity, where planning, intelligence, and human behavior intersect to create effects impossible through brute strength alone, illustrating that victory increasingly depended on controlling information as much as controlling territory. The operation demonstrated the fragility of belief, showing that well-managed deception could paralyze experienced commanders, disrupt communication, and immobilize reinforcements, proving that perception, trust, and fear can manipulate strategic outcomes across entire fronts, even amidst active combat conditions and unpredictable circumstances. Patton's personal discipline, despite natural ego, reinforced the deception, underscoring that human factors are critical in executing complex plans, because compliance, understanding, and initiative from individual leaders can determine whether theory translates into practical battlefield advantage under high-pressure conditions. Eisenhower's management of both deception and personality offered lessons in command psychology, revealing that leadership often requires guiding talent subtly while balancing ambition, morale, and operational requirements, emphasizing foresight, patience, and flexibility as indispensable qualities for successful coalition command. The success of Fortitude extended beyond Normandy, influencing subsequent Allied operations by proving that operational surprise can be preserved and leveraged through imaginative planning, controlled narrative, and careful orchestration, shifting German strategic focus without direct confrontation and shaping theater-wide outcomes decisively. Patton's legacy also carried cautionary elements, as reliance on deception required constant vigilance, risk assessment, and adaptability, showing that even brilliant operations are vulnerable to exposure, human error, or misinterpretation, requiring continued leadership attention to maintain strategic advantage through subtle manipulation of appearances. The psychological impact endured, because German forces remained cautious, defensive, and misallocated even after the initial phase, demonstrating that controlling enemy expectation can yield long-term operational benefits, where speed, aggression, and reputation are amplified through carefully engineered perception rather than physical engagement alone. Ultimately, the Fortitude deception revealed that war is won as much in minds as in battlefields, where creativity, audacity, and discipline combine to produce outcomes, proving that strategic misdirection can achieve results beyond what conventional metrics of combat strength might predict in complex theaters. Patton's role cemented a doctrine of dual utility, where individuals could function as both operational leaders and psychological weapons, showing that brilliant command fused with deliberate narrative control can influence enemy action, accelerate success, and leave enduring lessons about the subtle interplay between reality and perception in warfare.